Hi folks, today we're joined by Chris Anstey. He's one of the best ever basketballers to play for Australia. 2 times he played for Australia in the Olympics. He's a 3-time NBL championship player, coached in the NBL, played in the NBA as well with the Chicago Bulls and the Dallas Mavs. So we'll hear about his amazing career and also find out his thoughts on playing against Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman and that championship Chicago Bulls team back in the day.
Welcome to Legends with Bevo. Thanks to the Holdy, Coopers, Anytime Fitness Glenelg, and Paradise Mazda. And now, here's your host, Bevo.
Chris Anstey, great to have you on Legends with Bevo for a chat, mate. What have you been up to with this COVID-19 situation?
Probably, thanks for having me, but probably like most people, I've found new hobbies. I've spent a lot more time with my family, and I've been pretty fortunate to have a couple of roles that I've been able to hold on to through this. So, very fortunate for that. But I've actually been writing a lot. I used to write when I was younger, and it's one of those things that takes a lot of time. So in the absence of the ability to coach and get in front of people, I thought I'd find some time to put some ideas, well, not on the paper, but onto a computer screen and share them that way. So that's been fun as well.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying reading your stories and stuff, mate. They're very insightful, and keep that up. I'm sure there's a lot of people around the world that love that. So. And obviously, The Last Dance has been very popular. Some people have loved it, some people haven't. What was your take on it, and what was your thoughts? Because some people have said that there was a few things that weren't necessarily true about the documentary.
Oh no. I think everything was true. There were probably, of course, things like anything that you leave out and you want to put forward an opinion, but I thought it was pretty accurate. Clearly, from an Australian perspective, there are a lot of people I've spoken to who would have loved to have heard from Luke. That didn't happen, but I think that the documentary came at a perfect time, and the fact we're still talking about it weeks later, a documentary that was centered on events that happened 20 plus years ago, shows the gaping hole that live sport left. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed some of the insights into, a little bit of the behind the scenes about Michael Jordan, how it really affected his teammates, probably even with a little bit of retrospect, which was interesting. But I guess the other side for me was I walked into that building for a season and just seeing some of those old places and sites around town was a little bit, it was fun to watch and reminisce a little bit and show the kids and let them know that I was there. And I think just like a basketball fan, I enjoyed that element, but also took a lot from probably the lessons from Phil Jackson and some of the other guys as well.
Do you feel as though Krause sort of messed up there and they could have won one more championship, that fourth in a row, if they'd kept all that same group around?
Hard to tell. I think probably one of the things that got skipped over was how good a job Jerry Krause did at retooling the team during the years that Jordan and Pippen were there, because those two were the only two that were the constant threads through the 6 championships, and I think Krause did a pretty good job of retooling along the way. I think they probably deserved another shot, and I think they probably need to make some change. But the big one was Phil Jackson, and it's a little bit disappointing with a lot of front offices that when they want to make change, they want it to be the coach first. So Phil Jackson and his ability to deal with egos and personalities and different backgrounds is as good as anyone I've ever seen, maybe outside of Greg Popovich. And, he went on to win another, I think, 3 championships with the LA Lakers. So just proved that he was still able to coach. But, I would have liked to have seen him have another shot. They would have needed a few extra players. But sometimes you don't know how good you've got. They were the best of all time, but another year with some small change, and they could have rebuilt at any stage, but the drop off was just incredible. They were best team in the world to one of the worst teams in the NBA, if not the worst team in the NBA overnight. And many would argue they actually haven't found a way to rebuild, and we've gone 23 years now.
Yeah, you were a part of the Chicago Bulls post Jordan and Pippen. What was it like being there? Because it must have been a strange feeling, going from all the expectation of winning championships to, like you said, being one of the worst teams in history.
Yeah, there was certainly no expectation. Expectation to not be very good. But I actually wrote about this, is that it was aimless. I think everybody was trying to prove that they belonged, and that from the coaching staff to the players, nobody had a defined role that was established. We didn't have leaders in the group. We had veterans and great people and great players, but Hersey Hawkins, Randy Brown, Dickie Simpkins, they're incredible people, Tony Kukoc, but they hadn't really led before. They'd been a role player in a team with a superstar around it, so it was different for them. In the absence of that genuine established leadership, Elton Brown, Ron Artest probably got away with a little bit more, especially Ron, than what they ordinarily would have. Corey Benjamin was another young player, but I think everyone was just trying to prove themselves, players, coaches, and no one was really pulling for each other. But that's what the absence of consistency and continuity in a group does. So it felt transitional, but still, when you walk into that room, into the training facility, into the stadium, you see the championship banners, you see the trophies, you're a part of a franchise that, the minute you're wearing that Chicago Bulls logo on your chest, it's an incredibly proud feeling, and I'm certainly very proud to have worn it and fortunate to have been a part of the franchise for a season.
And you got to go head-to-head with the likes of the Dennis Rodmans and like I mentioned before, Pippins and Jordans and these sort of guys. And you had a bit of a scuffle with Rodman when you're playing for the Mavs.
Look, I only got to play them one time. The first time we went to Chicago, I didn't play, and it was pretty disappointing. But got to catch up with Luke Longley and got to pick his brain and spend a night with him. But by the time they got back to Dallas, and everybody knew that it was real, that Jordan was retiring, the Bulls were breaking up. This was their last dance, and it was in March, towards the end of the regular season. So it was the only chance I was ever going to have to play against the Bulls. And I've told the story a few times, but got to the game. My friends were there, my family were there. A lot of people had travelled around the world to see it. It showed how big it was, and it was just a different feel to any other game that Michael Jordan down the other end of the court when you're in uniform, knowing that you're going to play against him. And I knew I was because, I thought I was. I've been playing 30 minutes a game for the last few weeks. I'd started a few, so I thought undoubtedly I'll get a chance here. That once-in-a-lifetime experience to play against the greatest of all time. And I didn't play in the first half, and I was shitty. My mind wandered in the halftime break, and I was trying to figure out how to get a photo with him, and all I could come up with was fouling pretty hard and try to get in that photo. But I got in early in the third quarter, and we found a way to hang around. And Michael Finley and Cedric Ceballos in particular, two teammates of mine, played incredible. And, I played 18, 20-odd minutes in that second half and sort of found my way into the game, made a few bad mistakes and was nervous as hell. But, by the time, we tied it and sent it into overtime, and I got subbed out for Sean Bradley to win the jump ball. And by the time I came back in, with about 3 minutes to go in overtime, we're up. And that was another completely wild feeling of being subbed in to close out the Bulls. It was crazy. But we did. We won. I hit a jump shot. I had a dunk. Rodman and I had been sort of niggling at each other all night. And, that was just a lesson in basketball and how to play without the basketball for me that night, which I took with me for a long time. But, he got into me a little bit. I sort of threw an elbow and pulled up a millimetre short, but wanted to let him know that I knew he was there and sort of wasn't backing down. It turns out that actually endeared me to the Dallas fans a little bit, as a rookie standing up to him. And it wasn't that big a deal. I mean, what's he going to do on a basketball court? And, he's got a lot more to lose than probably what I did. So, look, we ended up winning. It was an incredible experience to, I suppose in hindsight, have that lesson that if there's a chance, I'd always been naive that if I can score one time or if I could stop someone one time and, you've proven you can do it. I think success is the ability to replicate something, not to prove you can do it one time. And we're able to replicate scoring enough and stopping them enough that one particular night that we won. So there was a chance. We took it. We won. I don't know how many times we'd be able to do it if we had that game 1,000 times again, but that's irrelevant 20-something years later.
Exactly. You'll take it, like you said. You've beaten one of the best teams of all time, mate. So, and it's funny you mentioned before Luke Longley, because Phil Smythe, who I'm sure you know well, is a mate of mine and here in Adelaide. And I actually said the same thing to him. I said, I'm really surprised that it wasn't more about Luke. 3 championships, you know, is a pretty big part of those of that dynasty, and really wasn't mentioned that much.
Yeah, he wasn't, and that was a little bit disappointing. And I don't buy the fact that they couldn't afford to send media out. There's plenty of media in Perth that could have done the drive down the highway with some set questions. Maybe Luke didn't want to, but for anyone who's ever heard Luke speak, and he doesn't do it that regularly, but he's one of the best storytellers I've ever heard. And you know, last time I saw him, we're in a room of his peers, my peers, some of the people we looked up to at it's called a Pete's Bar. I think Phil might have been there. Down in Melbourne, we have a Pete's Bar reunion every year, the old bar at the old Albert Park Stadium. And, the old basketball players come down and we catch up. But Luke spoke a couple of years ago, and it's one thing holding a group's attention in a big room. It's another holding a big room full of your own peers who probably know your story and have heard it all before. But Luke held their attention for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and could have gone for another 2. He's just that good. So if he ever does do something where he gets into a big room and speaks, whatever it costs, go and listen, because he's one of the best I've ever heard.
Yeah, I really hope I get the chance to do that. And I said to Phil the other day, if he ever comes to Adelaide, I'd love to meet him for a beer as well.
No, absolutely. Yeah, he's a good man. Have a beer with Luke.
And you've also got some involvement with the Digital Athlete, and shout out to Carly Post, who speaks very highly of you, Chris. So what's your involvement there, mate?
That's nice of her. No, it was something where, I suppose always looking to educate myself. Wanted to understand a little bit more about digital media, wanted to understand, I understand the impact it has on athletes, but a little bit of how I can actually implement change with some of the athletes I work with, how I don't like the term brand, but maybe, even with this writing, when I've been able to put something online, the ability to have it reach as many people as I can. And, just some really interesting lessons for me in that space. It's not my strength. I'm always looking to learn. And, Carly's been fantastic. She's done a lot with some good people. And, I know I spoke to Brad Johnson, the ex-Bulldogs captain, who speaks highly as well. So, it's been really fascinating spending time and picking her brain.
Yeah, I actually interviewed Brad recently. He's a good fella as well. And yeah, you're right, Carly's wonderful too. Now, you also represented Australia twice for the Olympics with the Boomers. Well, that must have been pretty cool representing your country as well, Chris.
Yeah, it was. I'm a little bit different to most people, where I still always felt like the country never... I've got to be careful how I say this. I was still representing myself, my family, my teammates, my friends first, sort of every time I played, and especially when I put on an Australian jersey, because I knew they were taking each step with me. They were following closely, and the country was critical. My teammates are important. I always just still felt like the people close to me came before the broader country that I hadn't really met. And I don't say that in any way other than I think it's important to remember where you came from and who you do represent every time you pull on any jersey, not just an Australian one. I don't think you change, but the experience was incredible, and it was heartbreaking at the same time. Walking into the Sydney Olympic Stadium for the first time was an absolute blast. That sense of pride and sharing that moment. Having had my time again, I wouldn't have done the opening ceremony, and I tried to convince the guys not to do it in Beijing, because it takes so much out of you that your performance for the next 48 hours is shot. It's a great life experience, but I would have rather win a medal. You're on your feet for about 8 hours that day, and it's not what you do before a really important game. And both Olympic games I've been at, we didn't start well. And then, of course, Athens I missed. And that was, made the team and was missed through injury not long before it. So some incredible moments, but some really disappointing ones, to not win a medal, to be really close, to miss one. But again, that sense of pride and, I guess, achievement in making the team. And, we did the best we could, or the best we knew how. And there's a lot of lessons in that. We played the best in the world. We met some great people, and we gave it everything we had, which I'm proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. And going forward, obviously, Tokyo 2021 now, not this year. The Boomers are, looking pretty good, and there's a lot of talk about them being a realistic medal chance. How do you see them going, Chris?
Yeah, they are a realistic medal chance, but so are probably 8 or 9 other countries. The thing with being so geographically isolated here in Australia is we lose track of other countries in the world who are doing what we're doing here. The NBA is global. We have so many great players here, but the best of them are all around the world, and that's the same with some European countries. But we don't have as much time together. We don't have as many neighbouring countries to play games against all year long. So we are behind in that regard, and I think our success at the Tokyo Olympics is really going to come down to how early the NBA players commit, whether they can commit with the postponement of the start of next NBA season due to coronavirus. But it's a real watch this space. I think the teams or the countries that are able to get together earlier, spend quality time together, and have some of that shared experience leading up to the Olympic Games will be a step ahead of the rest of them.
And as mentioned at the start of the chat, I'm really enjoying hearing about your stories over the years with basketball. And one particular one that you wrote about last week, Chris, was when you were stuck in Russia. And I can't believe what actually happened to you. I really feel sorry for you, but it was so interesting hearing about it. Would you like to share with the listeners out there more about it?
Look, it was just one of those. Russia, I thought I made the biggest mistake of my life when I went there, and I was a couple of months in. It was brutal. The temperature, no one spoke English. The living conditions were hard. It's just how it was. But I found a way to get through that first year. And, early into my second season, I'd switched clubs. I'd gone with Martin Mercep, a friend of mine, to Unix in Kazan. And, I had a few rules. And one of them was if I ever got really sick, to get to London, get to a westernized medical system. And flying home one day, I had these sharp pains. It turns out my appendix was ready to burst. And, the team doctor somehow got me to the hospital. I was evaluated, didn't understand a word he said other than surgery, and I sort of said London. And I got Mercep on the phone, and he was telling me, "No, your appendix is about to burst. It could kill you if you're on the plane." He said, but it sounds like he's done this operation before. And again, just the facilities aren't what we're accustomed to, and I guess we don't realise how good we've got it here. But I was rolled into a room full of 20-odd wooden beds with sheets on them, stripped naked and shaved in front of everybody, rolled back through the corridor without any clothes on, and into an operating theatre that sort of resembled like a dolphin torch hanging from the roof, and those green plastic bins with the black lids and full of bloody bandages. And absolutely petrified. I didn't think I was going to make it through, and I got strapped down. They pulled a couple of other tables from somewhere, strapped my arms down, strapped my torso down, and then sort of started putting the anaesthetic on. And I'd just been dry shaven and stung like crazy, and still butt naked and freezing cold outside. And the catheter, the anaesthetic went into my wrist, and I thought I'd try to relax and sort of just close my eyes and try to make the stinging subside. And, next thing I knew, it felt like as soon as I closed my eyes, that sound you get when you go to the cutlery drawer and rattle it around a little bit, I heard that. So I looked up, and the surgeon was over my appendix with his scalpel ready to go, and he'd had his mask and hat on. I just saw these two eyes kind of started yelling at the nurse. The nurse yelled back. She dialed up the anaesthetic, and I'm not sure if they thought I was a different weight or I told them the wrong answer, but I kept my eyes open as long as I could until it actually got me, and absolutely thought I wasn't going to wake up. I thought, this is it. This is where I'm done, in the middle of this shitty hospital in Russia. And of course, I was very happy to wake up. Had to spend a week in hospital because there are no antibiotic tablets in Russia. It was all done by injection still at that stage. And rough week. No staff at night time, sort of getting through the nights, and no TV, no tablets, none of that. But the minute I got out, I got on a plane to Dallas and found a doctor that I used to see and had him check me over just to make sure they hadn't left a rag or a knife or something in there. And I thought if I went home to my own doctors, there's a big chance I won't come back. So I thought Dallas was the next best thing, and did that, got back and ended up playing again. But I'm alive. I've got a much longer scar than was probably necessary to prove it, but not the best. But again, it's interesting, especially in retrospect. Sometimes it's those sort of moments and the harder times when you realise how fortunate we are to have what we have here in Australia. And kind of between you and me now, I'll never forget coming back to. I signed for the Melbourne Tigers, and our first practice game with my second time around at the Tigers was against the Adelaide 36ers in Millicent, and we stayed at this little roadside hotel, and the little breakfast hutches and all that kind of thing, and it was one of those $80-90 a room for two and there were a few complaints within the team. I couldn't have been happier. It was the best hotel I'd stayed in. It had heating. I could understand the menu. 5-minute drive to a stadium where I could speak to teammates I understood. I was wrapped. And again, I think just through those times in Russia, I just became so appreciative of what we have here, appreciative of my teammates and the opportunity I had. And, maybe I wouldn't have got that without spending that time in Russia.
Yeah, and you've got a great story to tell. And like I said before, you've survived now, so it's all good.
Stories are much easier to tell when you're alive.
Absolutely. And now, you've been since 2010, you've been involved with Caulfield Grammar as a coach there, and you've coached in the NBL as well, Chris. Any more coaching aspirations going forward? Could we see you one day coaching the Boomers?
I'll still coach. I've been a part of Basketball Victoria's state program for 5 years. I've been a part of the Australian junior program for 2 years. Like you say, Coach Caulfield, I've been around junior basketball with the girls at Dandenong and been at Caulfield now for 10 years. So, look, I still love coaching. I never went anywhere. I just didn't do it in front of people. And I've enjoyed a lot of the young athletes and some of the older ones that I've coached as well. And, it's interesting. You always feel like you improve and evolve as you go along. But I've learned a long time ago never to say never to anything, but I'm enjoying coaching young athletes who, haven't quite figured out what it means to be their best yet, whatever that is, and helping them understand that and give them some sort of direction and belief that they're able to be a little bit better than what they are. And, I really enjoy that sort of 16 through to 21-year-old age group. NBL, who knows? WNBL, who knows? But I'll always be involved in sport. I'll always be involved in sort of coaching, mentoring, whatever it might be. I guess the older I get, the further removed from actually playing, I can detach myself from that and understand that, I'm pretty fortunate to have come across and spent time around some of the people I had. And, a lot of them, I think any coach will tell you that, or any good coach will tell you that they didn't create or make up a lot of what they coach. It came from somewhere else, and it formed a philosophy, and that's no different to me, where I'm very fortunate to have been around some incredible people, and I'll continue to share what I've learned from them.
And you're a 3-time championship player in the NBL, Chris. Obviously, we've seen a lot of players playing in the NBA at the moment. I mentioned that before with the Olympics and how good Australia's looking at the moment. But in terms of the NBL competition itself, can you see it getting closer to the NBA in terms of the standard?
It'll never get close to the NBA. We just don't have the money. We don't have an $80 million salary cap. We officiate the game differently. Look, the biggest difference between the NBA and the NBL is the athleticism and the physicality. And it's one thing many young Australian kids just don't get is that, and we as basketball as a sport don't get it, is that we spend so much time on court playing and developing our skills, but we don't spend nearly enough time off court developing our body, developing our strength, our speed. That's what wins games of basketball. Skill's a component, but it's not nearly the most important one for me. You look at Dennis Rodman, who maybe took 10 jump shots over a season, but incredible multiple effort, vertical jumper, rebounder, tough and physical. You just don't get that here. We need to find time as a sport for our young athletes to have the time to invest in their bodies, to give them an off-season to grow and develop, and to not feel the need to make money off them by having them play in team after team after team all year long. Because, if you look at even our NBA, the Olympic team that we're going to roll out to Tokyo, not most of them didn't spend, they spent a lot of their years overseas in other environments where they prioritise that, whether it be college or Europe. Not many of them solely played here in Australia. So there's still a big gap that we need to address. but that comes at a financial cost because the fees won't be the same for the fee-paying basketball public. So can't even remember what your question was. The gap between NBL and NBA. It's look, we're still a long way off. It's a fantastic, but I mean, so is everywhere else in the world. But it's a fantastic league where the most probably 94 feet, full court defense, press break. We're up the floor. We're different, and we're rewarded by the way the game's officiated because we're probably how do you say this politically correctly? We're the softest officiated league in the world. We're still not sure what fouls are. We don't reward athleticism. We don't reward strength in a contest. We penalise soft hands on fouls and we reward flopping. We need to get rid of that. We need to reward strength. We need to reward athleticism, and that in turn for me provides a better spectacle anyway when we see that type of athlete come here to Australia and play.
Yeah, well said. Well, Chris, it's been a fascinating chat today, and like I said before, I'm really enjoying your writing on your Facebook page. Keep that up, and look forward to speaking again in the future. And keep up the great work, mate.
Will do. Thanks, Bevan. Thanks for the chat, mate. I've enjoyed it.
No, my pleasure. Thanks so much, mate. Cheers.